I had to choose love. And that's the title of my chapter in the book, is Choose to Love. Because I had to choose to love myself. I had to choose to love my past. I had to choose to love my future. What does that look like? I mean, it is a choice. We don't want to always do what's in front of us or what we've been through. We didn't want to do that either. But we need to do that because that's part of the process, and choosing to do that and choosing to love it's a decision. And you have to be intentional about that decision.
Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of CrownYourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
Blythe, I am so honored to have you. You are now part of a multi-author book called Shine Your Light, and it features your story.
Yeah.
So can you share your story here?
Yeah.
And then we'll just open it up and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. A little bit about me. I'm in my 40s. I grew up in Southeast Texas, which is nowhere. It's the armpit of Texas. I kind of talk a little bit about that in the book. I grew up in a time in the 80s, so I'm an 80s baby through and through, and all that implies. And so I grew up, in a time where things were just different. We had the dial-up phone and all the stuff, but I grew up with parents who were good, but hard to live with too. And so I grew up in an environment that had a lot of chaos and violence and just all that it entails, right? So that created a lot of trauma in my life, as a young child. And I saw things and had to endure things that no child should have to go through. And, I've talked with lots of women. And I think that we all share something throughout our childhood that is very similar. Mine just happens to be, heartache, a lot of heartache, a lot of trauma and death. And so my story is basically a tragedy to triumph story. When I was a young girl, I was sexually assaulted and lived through that, wound up in the hospital and had to have emergency surgery, was fighting for my life. At 15 years old, I had a miscarriage. And backtrack, my grandfather killed my grandmother when I was 13 years old. And then throughout, my time in high school and trying to find who you are and what you are and your purpose and all the things, I got so detached really from who I needed to be. And I always knew that I had a purpose and that God was in my life. I actually accepted God in my heart whenever I was 7 years old. So I always knew that He was there and protecting me. But at the same time, all these things occurred to me and all these things were around me. So it was really hard to focus on the good. And I'm a very positive and outgoing person. So I was harboring all the hurt inside and really tearing myself up inside. And, I got married at a young age. I had a baby at 22, excuse me. She's now 21. And having a life with my husband and doing all the things. And then my father kills my stepmother, my brother, my sister, and then actually winds up injuring a police officer. And so my whole world, everything that I had tried to really put it in the past and move on from. And I'm an adult now and I can do all this and I can be all this and my life's going to be perfect and I'm going to make it look like it is. I'm starting over, just crashed in front of me. And there was nowhere to hide. There was nowhere to hide from it. It was all over the news. It was a very big deal. This was a triple homicide in a very small town in East Texas. So, you know, loss of friends. I mean, I almost lost my marriage because of it. My job, I was just a wreck. If you can imagine, you know, on top of that, you know, I had to deal with an estate issue. I had to deal with the aftermath of that. And, you know, a family that really didn't accept me because I was the other woman's daughter. You know, it was really hard to work with that. And then I had a brother that survived and he's still living today. I think by the grace of God, you know, he survived that and he was not injured, but he was injured. I mean, he lost his brother, his sister, his mother, and his father in one day. And that's hard to really grasp, you know, but by the grace of God, he is a productive grown man now with a wife and two beautiful children that I'm so glad to that he is and that he's okay. But yeah, that's just
I know you. Way to just open it up. Like, what? I'm always fascinated with what was it that pulled you through in the darkest times? How did you find the strength?
That's a good question. You know, people have asked me that. And I didn't actually. I gave up multiple times. And when you come from this place of trauma, you begin to accept the trauma. And it almost feels as though it's like it's part of you. Mm-hmm. And it will always be who you are. That you're tainted somehow. And so I gave up a bunch during my life and during that time for several years, actually. I suffered from anxiety, major depression. I was a waif of a person. I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't eat. I actually went to multiple doctors because my body was shutting down, like my organs were shutting down because I was in so much trauma that my body could not respond. That's the way it was responding. And I was really sick. And yet every day I was fighting these demons inside of me that was telling me that it's over, Blythe. You just might as well give this up and let it go and just leave this world because you know that's what's coming, you know. But that still voice inside of me knew that I had a purpose, that Jesus was my savior, and that he was never going to leave me or forsake me. And that is huge. And that's the only place that I gained strength, was literally with my face down in my closet on the carpet with my knees, screaming out to God. And it was every day that it didn't leave me. So there wasn't any time during the day that I was not thinking about it. So I had to then redirect my mind. I had to ask God to help me redirect my mind. And during that time, I mean, I have a little girl who was there with me when I found out that all this occurred. She was traumatized by this. I have an older sister, my mother, you know, so all of us were being affected by this in different ways. But somehow, I think my closeness with my dad in some way, my bond with him was just shattered. I mean, my life shattered in front of my face, you know, and there was no way to just put it back together, you know, it just didn't, it wasn't going to happen. So the strength came from God. And I had to rely and trust in the process because it was ugly. It was a terrible process. Like, I wasn't cooking. I wasn't doing stuff. I wasn't going to the store. I mean, just you name it, daily activities. I just couldn't, I wasn't even thinking about what was next, but what was next in trying to get through the moment.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's pure like fight, flight, freeze right there. Just being frozen and stuck in time, which is trauma. And the interesting thing is that there's one that's not so often mentioned that's called flock. And flock is the people around you, and how when trauma hits, or when you, on a positive side, when you up level, when you transcend that trauma, how the flock that surrounds you shift. What did you notice about the change in your friendship circles or the change in your environment circles, and how those shifted as you process?
yeah, it was a big shift. Honestly, I have some core friends in my life that I've had a long time that went through some trauma with me when I was a teenager as well, who stuck by my side. But again, it scared them to death. And it was so ugly and sad and messy. It's hard to comprehend it. And especially someone that you know that's actually going through it. So the distance started to come. And I started to distance myself as well, because I couldn't get out of this cloud long enough to hear what they were trying to tell me about their wonderful life. And so none of it mattered, right? It was like, oh, that's so great. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was present, but I wasn't present. And the shift in my job, the outlook on my life, my marriage relationship took a hit for sure, because, and I'm going to be totally transparent right here, I couldn't sleep with my husband for months. I could not have an intimate relationship with him. And, that took a toll on our marriage, like just functioning. I was so distraught. I mean, I was so distraught. And, trying to come out of that, it's baby steps out of that, So my marriage took, a dive, it transitioned a little bit. And that was really hard. My relationship with my daughter, my oldest daughter, really shifted as well, because here I was, this devoted young mom who was excited about her next moment, her next big thing to accomplish, and just ended to, I just need you to go play, kind of a thing. And so I was there, and just the sheer crying. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure I didn't stop crying for like about 3 years. And sometimes I will just cry. I will get in the shower, or I'll get in the car, and I don't know what it is about the garage, but I just like get in the garage and I'll just come home and just cry. Sometimes, and it may be a couple times a year that I just have this really deep cry, because it's heartache, it's heartbrokenness. But what I do know is that God restored me. He restored my relationships, and he helped restore my heart, so I could move on, because you don't really move on. It just takes.
Yeah. And that you mentioned purpose and how that is transcended. And I mean, it takes a lot of courage to publicly and openly share a story that was so deeply painful. And it's not just one story. It's like there's a series of repeated trauma for a good chunk of time. And to have the courage to now start sharing that, what inspired that within you?
Well, I knew when it occurred. Honestly, I knew a long time ago. Like, even when I was a teenager, I knew that what was going to happen in my life was either going to make or break me. And that if I could survive this, and come out on the other side, that God had a plan. But I had to trust there was a plan. That was the hardest part. So, having the courage to tell it, I have told it in certain conversations with people or opportunities where it's been the right time or the right environment to tell that. I have told it to some Christian women's groups and things like that over the years. But it's the time now. The door was open and I was like, I have to walk through this, because I do feel as though that if I had not, that I was disobeying God. And, the flip side of my story is that I was also given a gift a few years after this happened that actually occurred in 2006. My father did this in 2006. And just can't fathom hurting a child in my mind. Like, it's just not even. So he was not in his right mind. And I know that. And it doesn't justify it at all, but he had a lot of demons. He really did. He had a lot of things that he just couldn't get past. But years later, I really prayed about, God, please take this physical hurt from me, because I was in so much pain. Even while I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, I was still in this pain. And I think it was so weird, because I know it's almost like fibromyalgia. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But it's actually trauma-based physical pain. And I've learned a little bit about that. And I was physically going through it. That's why my body was doing all the things that it was doing. And I asked God to take it from me and to give me joy, because I had zero joy, like none. I couldn't get excited about Christmas. I love Christmas. I couldn't get excited about having a new baby. I couldn't get excited about being married, going on vacation. Nothing. And I'm a planner. I like stuff. I love all those things. That's kind of what I do for a living. And so, it's been in me always to be this like person, an entrepreneur, and a person who gets excited about building things and creating things and so forth. And I was just no joy. And I feel like it had been stolen from me, literally stolen from me. And so I asked God to give it to me. And you know what? He didn't right away. And I had to go through some things. And I had to see those things. I had to be in the dark place. I recently told someone too, but yet that dark place was beautiful. The process was beautiful coming out of that. It was like this place where, an animal or an insect or something, you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to die. And they don't. And they come out on the other side and you're like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's what happened. It's pretty amazing looking back on it. So a few years after that, people ask me, they're like, well, did you die? Because I went to heaven and I got to see heaven. It is gorgeous. And I can tell you that it's real. God is real. The light is real. The light is the love, and it is God. And he is so big. It is so big. This place is so big. I can't even tell you what it is, like how big it is. It's huge. And the color and the light and the feeling, the love is like fills you inside and outside. And all you want to do is just praise God. That's all you want to do. And like, you want to be there. Like, you want to stay and you want to be there. And it's all you ever want to think about ever again. And it's beautiful. It's just wonderful. And I knew that I was there for a very short period of time. I knew that I had a family. I knew that there were other people there that knew me, but I couldn't see them. And honestly, I was kind of on the outskirts of this, of heaven. And I wasn't really going to be allowed to go in, but I was going to be allowed to see enough to tell people that, like, hey, this is a real place. And there were other people in the area that I was in, actually. So I know that there are other people. I don't know if they were dead. I don't know.
What happened to get you there?
Absolutely nothing. So I woke up one morning and my youngest daughter she was crying in her baby bed. And like any mother's going to do, she lays there a couple minutes and decides, well, am I going to go get her? and so I was like, I'll go get her, because I was nursing. And I knew that she was fussing because she was hungry. So it was early too. It was very early in the morning. It was like maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. And I went and got her and I laid back down and I nursed her in my bed because I was like, I'm going to lay back down. I'll just lay back down. I've got enough time to do that. And I mean, I'm telling you, my head no more hit the pillow, and it was literally a twinkling of the eye. Like I was there. There was no in between. It was not like I just went into this place or I walked into a tunnel. No, it was just, I'm in this place. And it was not a dream, because after I woke up, I had this beautiful, just fuzzy, good feeling that I couldn't get off of me for hours. And I knew that it was the Holy Spirit inside of me that was instilled with me. And I can't begin to tell you how amazing and beautiful it is, because it is, and it will be forever. I mean, like it's forever and ever. That's just a little bit about it. I mean, I'm trying to describe it to people in this way. And I remember when I asked Jesus to come into my heart, and some people may have not had that experience yet. I'm not sure, but I'd have. And so I remember that moment and feeling filled up with love and joy and comfort and a feeling of purpose, and that something good was going on inside of me, right? Mm-hmm. So I have tried to describe it as you take that moment in your life, the moment that you knew that God was real and that this was a real thing, and you take that and you times it by trillions. And that's what it's like. That's what heaven feels like. You can't even fathom how much it is, because it's not here on earth. Nothing compares to it. Nothing. No color, no purpose, no words, nothing. So
I think when my father passed, there's a Native American proverb that says, basically like when someone's grieving, that they have pierced the veil, basically, and that in Native American cultures that they are to be revered, and because they are so close to the edge of the in-between. And when my father passed, and I was in Australia, miles away, 8,000 miles away from where he was, yes, there was the devastation. And then I had 3 days of the most amazing peace. And I felt his love while he's no longer here. Like I felt that the love and the presence of where he is now, and just how enveloped he is in love. And that was miraculous. And I remember that I was like, everything that was beautiful and good about that man got to, like, because my father also struggled with alcoholism and addiction and everything that was his humanness was left away, and that died, and that it's only the goodness, the love, and that he was in this place just surrounded by, I felt it as pure as anything, and it was transcendent.
Sure.
And so the experience of being able to be given those gifts and be able to have those experiences where that there is more to this world and beyond than what's here. But now that you're in this space, since we are still in this world, what are you transforming into in your next iteration as you now have started sharing your story and sharing your gifts and sharing your experiences and your light?
Wow. I think that's to be discovered some. Right now I am in this transition place. It's an interesting space for me. I feel very vulnerable. I feel free in some way. I feel rejected somehow in some way as well, which is interesting by some. I feel like it's too much for some people, actually. Maybe some family and some things like that. I feel renewed and like I'm ready for whatever the next step that God has for me, which I'm not sure, but I know it's something because he's always got something for me. I just need to be ready to walk through the door, and it is coming. I just don't know what it is. And honestly, having done this, one of the reasons that I will say that I took this step in general was because I felt as though God was calling me to do it, number one. And number two, the purpose behind it. The book is called Shine Your Light. I mean, for goodness sakes, I couldn't make this stuff up. And then, the fact that the funds are going back to the Kiva program, I mean, completely touched me. These are women who are in, another country who are needing to get out of poverty or prostitution or just needing a new life for themselves, who we're now able to get the microloans to help fund that new life, right? And God gave me a new life. So I love the whole purpose of that. I couldn't ignore it at all. But one of the main reasons that I wanted to do this, and I've been wanting to write a book forever, and I probably will write my own book at some point, but I wanted my children, my girls, to know that no matter what happens in your life, you are still loved. You are still worthy. You still have a purpose. You are still powerful and impactful and influential. And you are going to do great things. And I needed to show them that I could overcome that hump in my life. And I don't want to say, because it's a big hump, but
Everest was a hump.
But I've gone on in my life to be a successful person in my career. But I've always hidden behind this, like, oh, you can know this, the fun Blythe, the smiling Blythe, but I don't want you to really know too much about my past because it's really sad and ugly. And I don't want you to judge me thinking like, oh my gosh, she's so crazy. Like, but you know what? Everybody's a little crazy, but I'm not, and so I had to then realize too that, aside from the trauma, aside from, the depression and the anxiety and things like that, that doesn't make you crazy. That just makes me have had trauma in my life. I mean, and I think we all process trauma, and we're talking about it more in society. And I'm glad that we are, because this is real stuff. People deal with stuff all the time, and us just closing the door and saying, that's so great, you deal with that when you get home, it's just not going to work anymore. I think it's just, we've gotten too far to where we cannot ignore it. It is big, and we need to do something about it. And this was kind of my way of sharing that you can do something about it,
Yeah. Gosh, you just somehow have this power to leave me speechless, because you have such a beautiful presence and such a heart and a love that I have felt from you since the day I met you. It's so surprising about, your past, and I remember when we were at lunch and you shared with me that story, and I was like, what? But I love the fact that you just said that, just because you have anxiety or depression or have experienced these things in your life, and I know I certainly have, as well as eating disorder and whatnot. And I remember that there was, because my family had a lot of generational trauma with sexual abuse passed down. And my dad would joke, oh, you always wonder where insanity ran in the family. And the more I have evaluated that belief, when I was younger, I definitely had a language and a fear around being perceived as crazy. Whereas now I've embraced the beautiful, as my husband calls it, a hurricane, where I know how to access it. I know how to leverage that side of me that's able to suddenly transform a house and sell it within 6 weeks. And, just being able to, let's fly off, just to access that intuition where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something that everyone else thinks is crazy, but I know this is fully aligned for me. And so I think there's a language that we as society need to start embracing, being aware of like our crazy and then like dangerous crazy. And what is that? And understanding the language and the great.
There's the balance here.
Yeah. And the balance is because I think when you see the depths of the deepest, darkest spaces of humanity, and you definitely have, you also have the power to see what my friend Jan Joy talks about is you've experienced the deep end of joy, and that you have the ability to access a whole other level. And it's just like with being able to because you have that depth, you're able to access that height of extraordinary joy. What on a daily basis, since you say that you lost your joy for a while until you were blessed with this gift, what on a daily basis brings you joy? Like, how do you source your joy now?
Oh, wow. I'm very intentional about taking time in the morning to have a space for myself to where I can meditate, or I can be in nature, or I go outside on the porch, or have a cup of coffee with my husband, or maybe I listen to a podcast in the morning that fills me with positive energy. And this new energy thing is really getting to me, because I do think we all have this energy within us, and we can either feed that energy or we can deplete that energy. And so I make it very intentional that, you know what, I want to feel deflated sometimes so I can feel what energy should feel like, right? And so I want to be in both spaces, but yet at the same time, to give me that joy, I'm very intentional about looking for the joy and choosing joy, because we can choose to be not joyful. I mean, if I sat around all day long and thought about all the details of everything in my life, I would be a miserable person. Like, I'd cry all day long. And so I wouldn't find joy. And I think that we have to look for it. It's not just going to fall out of the sky. You have to be intentional about it. And for me, those are some of the things that I do. Sometimes I just dance around the house to find joy. Sometimes I listen to Selena and find joy. Just whatever it may be. I feel like friends and family and the things that I find joy in is what I like to partake in the most, because, those are the things that are going to fill me and keep me fueled up for the moments when I'm not very joyful. And I have those moments too. So.
And when you have those moments, do you find that it's correlated in directly to your past, or is it just something that's in your present circumstance?
It's usually directed to my past. What happens is I get this, I get an anxious anxiety type of feeling over me, a very deep depression that I'll fall into in my brain for a little while. It may be 30 seconds, and it could be 2 hours. It could be all day. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm just a terrible person. I did this and I did that, and I'll just beat myself up about something, or I'll keep this thing in the back of my mind, like I'm not a good mother, and I'm not a good wife, and I'm not a good co-worker, and I'm not a good friend because I haven't talked to her in 2 months, and blah, blah, blah. And it just, all these things just start beating me down like hard rain. And then I sometimes, most of the time, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. That is a lie. Those are lies. That is not true. And you need to stop. because you're being ridiculous and Satan's filling your brain with those lies. And you're a good person. You do good things, and stop, And so I have to redirect my thoughts. Or sometimes I watch Moonlighting and I feel better. or, whatever. I don't know.
Is that what you do with Sarah?
Providing women, That's all I'm now. I don't know, I'm on this kick. I'm like, ooh, I want to watch Moonlighting. I don't even know why.
I totally bypassed, if you took reference a movie from the 40s or the 50s, I probably have seen it. But the 80s is like the one decade that my husband is like, we need to watch the 80s movies. I'm like, I don't know. So there's a lot of I need my 80s movies education.
Yeah.
So being able to snap yourself out of it like that and pull yourself from the darkness, I'm sure that it didn't happen overnight to be able to have the resilience to bounce back so quickly. But that
triggers in myself. Sometimes listening to certain songs will trigger it for me. Being in a certain place, certain times of the year, smells or sounds will sometimes trigger that, because I'll go back into these places and I have a what they call a photographic memory from when I was a child, and it's due to trauma, actually. And so if you ask me a day, almost to the day, I can tell you what I was wearing, where we were, what we were doing, who was talking, and we're talking like from when I was in a baby bed. So, sometimes I'll go back to these places or something will trigger that. And then I'll go to this place and then I'll wander off. And in that place, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I had to start to recognize the triggers of those things and avoid those triggers and be like, okay, don't need to do that. I don't need to drive by that. I don't need to go here. I don't need to hear that, whatever it was. And then be intentional. Make shifts in what the direction that I wanted to go in was, because I don't want to go back there. And sometimes I still go back there, but I always try to redirect where I'm going, or sometimes my husband helps me, or sometimes my daughter's like, Mom, stop talking about that. It's okay. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I'm glad you said so. Because sometimes I don't recognize it myself and someone else recognizes it for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the power of having family, friends, coaches, mentors, support around you who just give you that, because we can't see the label from inside the jar.
Right.
We don't know what the words are on it, but somebody else can read it for us and let us know. My husband's incredibly good with noticing mine, and he's like, Kim, hey, Kim, let's pull it back. When you think of how you love yourself now, though, because you have cultivated such this beautiful love and this love of service, you are actively involved in our community. You are actively involved in supporting women, in building other people up, in the crisis center of Como County, and in just the Women's Business Alliance. So many things you're actively involved in, while also, maintaining a successful career and being a mom. How do you love yourself through each one of those roles?
I think some of those roles teach me how to love myself. I learn new things all the time through other people, and I discover new things about someone's life or, their journey or whatever. And it gives me perspective. I love perspective. I really do. I listen to a lot of different types of podcasts and read different types of books. It's real funny because people are like, you listen to that podcast? I'm like, I do, because it's interesting to hear what different people, want out of their life, or what it is that their purpose, or what it is that they do, or why they do these things, whatever. You know what? The one thing that I found is that people want to be loved. They just want to be loved, and they want to have purpose. And so that's my purpose too, right? And so loving myself I find new ways to do that sometimes. Sometimes I reinvent that a little bit, and I'm like, you know what? I'll cut my hair, and I just did that. Now I
You
like,
look,
you know,
you look fabulous.
I do have these moments where over time I feel like I've begun to come into the love of myself more. But gosh, there's times too where I'm just like, oh, I hate me today. You know, I really do. You know, where I'm feeling bloated or I don't know, whatever. It's just, you know, you're just like, I'm not me and I don't like this and I don't want to be around you or anybody else.
How do you go back to being to that source?
Yeah, I do.
To that, how do you pull yourself out? Like, not necessarily either pull yourself out or pull yourself through it when you recognize those moments.
You know, I think that for me, I don't know. It's just kind of a knowing. I don't know if it's a strength thing, if it's a God thing, if it's a little bit of everything. But I just kind of go, hey, you know what? You're good, right? Yeah, you're good. And this is good. And you're going to get through this. This too shall pass, whatever this is. And you will come on to the other side and you will be transformed from that, whatever that may be, because you'll be a different person tomorrow than you were today. And the only purpose that you have is to get better over time and to grow in that and help people. And I love helping people because, and that's, you asked me, you talked about, you know, my community service and all of that. I have always been a person who wanted to give. I give and I love gifts and I love watching people open gifts. And so service is like a physical gift, a literal gift. And I just enjoy it so much because I feel like even if it's a small thing, that it is impacting someone in some way. Some way. I don't care if it's a pair of socks that I've given to something. I really feel like whoever gets those socks needs those socks, and they're going to use them. And whether they throw them away or they put them on their hand, I don't know. But whatever it is, it has a purpose because God knows that my heart and what the purpose was that He asked me to do. And so I feel as though I'm serving Him when I'm doing the service in the community, and that's the purpose of it. Is to really share God's love, not Blythe's, not Blythe. It's to share God's love with others. That's what it's for.
You have such a beautiful relationship with God and just religion in general. And I know a lot of our listeners don't necessarily, like they may call it something different. They may call it God, source, universe. How in those moments were you able to not blame God?
Oh, you know, I think that's a really good question. I knew that He was there, right? I've known that He's always been able to pull me out of the depths of whatever, right? And He could have changed this in the blink of an eye. So why didn't He? Why did I have to go through these things? Why did you have to go through things? Why does anybody have to go through things? And one thing that kept popping up for me was why? Why? Guess what? I don't need to know why. I don't have to know the answer. I don't have to be the all-knowing Blythe. I just have to do. And I will know one day. I'm telling you, like it's so true. But that's really what got me through, because if I kept asking why all the time and needing validation and needing some answer and a reason and so forth, I would have just continued to be like, this is not fair. This is terrible. This is awful. My life's awful. And He could have changed this and blamed God all day long. But literally, it was like writing on the wall one day. And I felt this spirit coming to me and a knowing from God that was like, stop asking the questions. You don't have to know the answer. I've asked you. This is what I've put before you. And I just need you to obey and trust the process because I love you and I love them just as much as I love you. I died for them just as much as I died for you. And so I had to come to terms with that. And I've struggled with that because I didn't want to lose my family. Nobody wants anything like that to ever happen to them. I didn't want to lose a child. I didn't want to have a miscarriage when I was 15 years old. I didn't want to be hurt when I was 13 and be in emergency surgery. I didn't want to have another family member that died. I didn't want to have all these things happen to me. But you know what? God knows why. And I just have to trust that and know that that's why. You know, he put me through all those things so I can talk to you today. You know, that's one of the reasons why.
And looking at, why is it's such a great question, like looking forward, looking at purpose, looking at vision, but it's a really crappy question when you're looking at your past.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that I love that you were told to stop after the question of why, because sometimes we'll never know why, but instead looking at what questions shifted. What question, maybe it's like for me, it was instead of asking why, I started asking, well, like, what do I actually want to feel? Like, do I really want to focus on the why that's making me feel horrible, that's making me focus on all the things that are wrong? Or do I want to focus on actually trying to source and find love and joy and peace and happiness?
Right. I had to choose love.
Yeah.
That's what I had to choose. And that's the title of my chapter in the book is Choose to Love. Because I had to choose to love myself. I had to choose to love my past. I had to choose to love my father, even though that all happened. I had to choose to love, my future. What does that look like? I mean, it is a choice, and, I know you're married. I've been married for 20 something years now. And I got to choose to love sometimes. I have to choose to love my children sometimes, or my job, or whatever it may be, right? We don't want to always do what's in front of us or what we've been through. We didn't want to do that either. But we need to do that because that's part of the process, and choosing to do that and choosing to love it's a decision. And you have to be intentional about that decision.
Y'all, she said it. I didn't. My audience, like my TED Talk was on decision making, like the decision to actively choose how you are experiencing life when default programming is like, this is how you could experience it. And it's negative, horrible. I was going to say horrifying and horrible, but they kind of came into one.
It's a pursuit of something.
It's a pursuit, yeah.
What are you pursuing? Are you pursuing your past or are you pursuing your future? You get to decide. And if you want to love something, you get to decide. And that's how I had to look at it. There was no other way. It was either that way or literally wind up in the grave for myself. There was no other way. There was no other way.
Love or fear.
Right.
No, in the process of learning to love, how did forgiveness play a role?
Wow. I think that forgiveness is a really big word. And we use it as like, oh, I forgive them. But do we really? So I had to say to myself, you know what? I hate all of this. I hate it all. I really do. But God forgave me for the things that I've done. And he forgave him and he forgives you before we can even forgive ourselves. And if I can't forgive, then how am I supposed to ask him to forgive me for the things that I'm doing yesterday, next year, whatever it may be, because we're all going to mess up in life. Some of them are really big and some of them are really small. But it's all about forgiveness. And, I think I've had to choose to forgive over and over and over again. I don't think it's necessarily been something like, you know what, I forgave them. No, that's not exactly how it happened. It's like I had to be intentional and say, you know what, I loved this person. And regardless of the circumstances, I do forgive because they know not what they do. They're not even here anymore. How can you hate somebody who's dead? I mean, but you can. I can tell you that you can.
Yeah, you can.
You can't. But I had to choose to do it, and just keep at it. Keep at the forgiveness part, because I think that's probably the hardest part. Honestly, I can love somebody because that's something that we long to do, right? That's something we long to do in life, is to be loved and to have purpose. But forgiving was not on the list. But I have to forgive, and I have forgiven. And, I still think, like that person, maybe it's a person in your life right now, or maybe it's someone that somebody's going to deal with in the future or whatever. And there's going to be something that's going to happen between people or circumstances or whatever. And we get to choose whether we're going to forgive that person or not, because we're the only ones who are going to realize, how that's affecting us. And I couldn't allow it to affect me in the ways that it was, because it was so heavy that if I didn't release that and didn't forgive, that I was gonna carry that darkness with me.
What does forgiveness feel like for you?
Oh my goodness. It's very freeing, really. I think once you make the decision to do it, you're like, you know what? This is a good place. I feel peace about it. And that's how it feels for me. Sometimes it's been a screaming match with God, or with, the closet or the shower or whatever. And like, I've really dug in and been like, no, I'm not doing this. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm not ready for that. I want to be mad. I want to not forgive. And again, choosing over and over again that, I need to do that for myself, not for someone else. It's not for somebody else's benefit. It's for my own.
You are so strong, and I'm sure you have heard that. And in the space of hearing that, I know that sometimes those who are very strong, at least I know for me, because I've been told that I'm very strong and it's great. And then there are those moments that I don't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure. I recently had a moment in my life, and I just wanted to kind of feel the moment, where I was down, I was mad, I was upset about something. I wanted to feel that way. I didn't want to forgive. I didn't want to move on from it. I wanted to just wallow in it for a while. And I felt like shit. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, for a week, it was over a week. And I was just mad at my kids. I was mad at my husband, and I was mad about work, and I was mad about my body, and my hair wasn't right. Nothing was right. And then I realized, I was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this to me. Why am I doing this to me? I had to recognize what I was doing, because I'd gotten so far down into the depths of it that I was like, I couldn't see where it even had started. And then I was like, oh gosh, I know how this began, and I need to address that and forgive that and decide to move on from that. And I did. And I was like, okay, I got to be done with that, because this is hurting me, and it's hurting my family, and it's hurting my outlook and perspective and everything. I was just in a bad place.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it really does.
We got to choose it over and over again. Make the decisions.
Choosing love, choosing to forgive, and choosing to, it sounds so glib. Like, oh, I'm going to take the high road. It also sounds a little arrogant, quite frankly. Yeah. Like, I'm going to take the high road. Oh, yeah. But at the same time, it's on a vibratory emotional scale. Like, love actually resonates at a far higher vibration than shame, guilt, fear, anger, pride. And when we're holding on to that shit, then that's where we're getting stuck in our own pride and in our own anger and all that.
Right.
We're not actually living into the space where we can cultivate around us love. And I've found that just by shifting our perspective, sometimes the perspective of the entire situation changes.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And sometimes you don't want to see that. You don't want to receive someone else's perspective. You don't want to hear what they have to say. And, we're missing out, really missing out when we choose to do that. And I've done that. But, again, what do we want? What are we pursuing in life? And I think that that's where it's at, really. Yeah.
In the pursuit of love and joy.
Right.
Blythe, I love this conversation, and I would just like to flip the script into a little bit of a lighter note.
Sure.
And go into some rapid fire.
Oh, okay.
So, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie, and why?
Goldie Hawn.
Overboard?
I love her so much. I do. I just love her energy and her smile and her wit, and I just love her. Don't know why.
What woman would you want to trade places with just for a day? To be in her body at any point in history?
I think Queen Elizabeth. I would want to really know what it was like to be Queen Elizabeth for just a day. I think that woman probably felt and heard and lived more than we could ever imagine. And to get that insight would be so eye-opening for me, I think.
What is your morning routine for a successful and joyful and love-filled day?
Coffee made by your husband or someone else. Definitely a little time to yourself to kind of just mosey, maybe. Meditate. And, I get some music in there, a little bit of that, and try to get ready in about 45 minutes.
You've got a triple M framework for morning success. Meditating, music.
That's right.
How do you set yourself up for a successful morning with your evening routine? What's your evening look like?
I really, and people know this about me, I wear a dress probably every day of my life. Years ago, I didn't do that. I wore a pantsuit, and I wore a jacket, and I wore an undershirt, and I wore a belt, and I wore whatever. And I really started shifting my wardrobe into a dress because it's like a one-stop shop for me. And so I can have it dry cleaned and hang it up, and I put it on. And honestly, that saves me so much time in the evenings from ironing or getting ready or putting something together and multiple layers and being hot and sweaty and whatever. That saves me a bunch of time. And then I walk probably a few times a week, at least 3 times a week. I go and walk in the evening, and that really gets me geared up for whatever the rest of my evening may look like. And it also helps kind of renew my mind a little bit. I just like to just look into nature. Sometimes it's late because it doesn't matter what time I come home, I go walk. So it may be 8:30 at night, and people are like, "Why is that lady out this late?" It's true. It's like they will see me and they'll be like, "Oh, that's that lady that lives on the street." But I try to be intentional about that. And then try to eat as healthy as possible. That doesn't always happen. Last night we had tamales and it was awesome. But I try to do that, spend time with family. I don't watch a lot of TV. I read, and I may listen to find information about project that I have going on at work, or prepare for something that I have the next day. Spend time with my girls. I like to just visit with them. And yeah.
If you do watch TV, is it a football game?
It's usually football. Football's Monday, football's Tuesday, football's Wednesday. How many more days is football? My husband's going to listen to this. He's going to be like, "You really mentioned that?" I'm going to be like, "Yes," because it's Right now, it's football.
Okay. I am not a football person or a sports person whatsoever, but I do love the athlete's mentality and like how athletes think and how they approach their life and day. It's like, I love that. What do you define to be your queendom?
Really, when I feel like I'm in my queendom is when I get to be, I just get to be myself. Like, and I'm not saying that I don't get to be myself most of the time, but when you're in a work environment or you're like, in a professional setting or so forth, like I have a best friend and that feels to me like, drinks with my best friend and a Mosey's on a Friday night and some dancing and I don't know, a Jeep ride down to the river. That's where I feel like I'm just in my queendom, honestly, because that's the heart of who I am, and brings me a lot of joy. It's just breaking down the walls and saying, you know what, this is my space. This is where I feel like I'm the most at one with myself, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And lastly, how do you crown yourself?
With lots of jewels. Jewels. No. How do I crown myself? My girls are my crown. My girls are my crown. My two girls are so smart. And really, I feel like people define success in so many different ways. Success for me is, not necessarily a successful career or a successful whatever, degrees or whatever. Success for me is knowing that my girls are going to be or becoming, productive citizens who are giving back to their community, who have compassion, who are seeking joy and love, but are coming into themselves and knowing who they are and loving that and embracing that. And I feel like somehow watching the success of, come to fruition within that I've tried to instill in them, and really that's my crown. That's where I feel like my crown is.
Blythe, you're phenomenal. And I'm so excited to see who not only you become in this path to your new purpose, but also what your girls are going to do with such a shining example as you consciously doing the work and choosing joy consistently.
Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed being on this podcast with you so much.
Absolutely. And be sure to get a copy of Shine Your Light and read Blythe's story on how to choose love, because it's what makes the world go round and what every 80s song is about. And
right.
And it's also the magic that allows you to deeply forgive and transcend trauma. So with that, as always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.